old that's the biggest issue we've been having as humanity, right?
This is it. I mean, so we can't then say, that this is going to work, that is going to work, because of the fact that possibility is there, that they can be put into that way with a power trip. I mean, it makes it unsafe.
Yeah.
And it makes it unsafe for humankind.
Very true. I was basically mainly talking about historical events because that's the only thing I can talk about.
This is across the board, though. The thing is, this goes across time.
Yeah.
This is a historical thing. I'm not just talking in particular about one religion or another religion.
Okay, that's what I thought we were doing.
No, but I mean, well, I mean, that's what my kind of interpretation is of things, is that, but from your conversation, that's what I kind of read into the Sharia side of things.
Yeah. Because
I'm not of any religion at all. Just to let you know.
I've gathered that,
I'm faithful, I'm spiritual, but I'm not of a fixed religion, because I'm happy to stand there and look at what every positive is across the board and absorb that positivity rather than take any kind of hatred from any of them.
I'm very similar to you then. I'm very similar to you. Very similar to you. But my point was just that I was trying to argue why fixed. So there are fixed beliefs, right? There are fixed beliefs in Islam that you can't change. That's true. There's certain things that you believe about God, you can't change them. There's certain things that you believe about the prophets that you can't really change. But once we talk about law is a very living thing.
It is,
It's a living thing. It constantly evolves and changes and considers.
The scary thing is the people who are in charge of it.
Yeah, I understand you now. I understand what you were trying to say, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
I do agree.
That's where I think it's a worry for others and things like that, where it's like you worry about who is actually in charge of making these laws.
Yeah.
Because of the factor of, I mean, obviously I'm a female, so I'm thinking from a female perspective, with like sort of equal rights and things like that women should be treated better and things, and girls deserve education and things like that, and these kinds of things in some states could be brought in that it's not allowed. That's not a fair.
I understand what you mean by then. There should be a fixed law, and that's like unchangeable.
Totally unchangeable.
I hear what you're saying.
So there's no interpretation allowed.
Well, and I think just going on to that, my point's slightly a bit different from yours, but I think that's when your conversation with Bob in terms of that, because obviously the Muslim claim would be Sharia is your view is a bit more different from some of the sort of polemics that goes out, but it's more like, okay, it has to grapple with modernity, whereas some people may disagree, I don't know, but say, well, it's a perfect law, so then if you're saying that as in the general sense, not you, then it will be like, well, it should be fixed, and it should be in a certain way not having that human interpretation where it can sort of...
But you run into so many issues, because if reality was less dynamic than from what it is now, then you would have a good way to argue this. But because how do you argue when context is slightly different? For example, to okay, let's cut off that, or this is the.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why, for example, I think this is the beginning of Eid where you look at the moon. Ramadan. So because from what I remember, there was a certain stipulation. But then people realised that the moon is visible at different times in different places, so then now you have different places. So that was a kind of human intervention, which something that should have considered this initially, where the stipulation seemed to be under the presumption that everyone would see the moon at the same time. Where there was that sort of then human element to say, well, actually, in different places people see it.
But I'm confused by yourself as well. I mean, you're quite ardent Christian. And Christianity undergoes the same thing. I mean, there are certain, there's elasticity in how they apply laws, and laws change as well.
But I would say just with Christianity, we don't have Sharia per se. Well, we don't have Sharia in that sense.
Well, now you don't, but there was times where you had.
There's a queen on top of the crown.
You used
who
to
is
have
in charge
it.
of laws.
No, but not a kind of a thick in a sense. So what we closest to that we had was like when you had sort of the church, the leadership of the church, where it was more kind of aligned with the state, and now that's kind of broken up. But whereas Islam is more political, Christianity isn't really a political, as political. No, because it's not.
You're gonna have to justify that one.
No. How can you say that Christianity?
Yeah, Christianity is not political.
No, in terms of if you're looking
political religion.
No, if you're looking at, for example, the way the formation of the Catholic Church, for example, and its alignment with the state, it would be more political. But if you for example, if you look at the Bible in itself, there is no sort of political sort of determination within it. It's more about the salvation of the individual.
So how have Christians for like the last 2,000 years been able to pick verses and justify certain passages in the Bible for political gain?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Unless you look
which is again happening in America right now.
Yeah,
right?
but that's what I'm saying. Unless you look at different maybe kind of divisions within the church, whether it's like Catholicism or whatever, where you then have a designated
But it still
leader.
occurs. It still occurs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not.
No. But I'm not arguing that it doesn't occur. Yeah. But I'm saying one is stipulated by God, which is the Sharia. It's more codified as opposed to.
Remember exactly. But remember what I said to you earlier.
Yeah, the Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments are the laws of God.
But no, but that's not political.
But remember.
Wait. How is it not political when basically the foundation of our laws of this country probably come from that, from the
derives
Bible
from that as well.
of the fact that the head of the state was the Queen who had control of the country and therefore created the laws.
I would say it's different because, for example, we don't have a concept of a caliphate, a khalifa.
Why is it a different concept? That's just
you talk to a Catholic and you'll tell you.
Yeah, that's why I made the provision of.
Yeah, well, they're one of the major.
Yeah, which is more based. You have the institution of.
But on top of that, if you think about, you said Christianity is less political.
Yeah,
like it's read in its entire history is read in every.
You
can go to every period and you'll find it.
Yeah, but
and it's based on text as well. No, it's also based on text.
I'm not saying Christianity cannot integrate or influence.
And also, on top of that, I wasn't finished. Yeah, I know. And also, on top of that, I told you about the Sharia.
Yeah.
The Sharia is not a codified thing. A book called Sharia, you go into it and point 1, Sharia 2. That's not what it is. The Sharia is it's something that is within the text. That you have to carve out of the principles that the Quran talks about.
It's basically scholar's gone along and said, okay, this is what this is telling should be a rule, this is what this is telling.
So the Quran, because this is what the principles of Sharia is 5, okay? 1 is to preserve human life. You know about this, do you?
No.
Okay, Sharia, the precepts for Sharia are preserve human life, preserve religion, preserve the mind of someone, preserve lineage, and preserve property.
Okay.
Right? So these are like the 5 things what Sharia is there to protect.
So why are they chopping people's hands off them?
Okay, I answer that in a minute. I will answer that in a minute. But I'm going back to you. Now, you can't go to the Quran and pinpoint it at this. Yeah. So the Quran is done
but then you have the Sunnah as well.
But in the same breath, the Quran is done very similar to what you were saying about the Bible, that it's about teachings, and ultimately about the union, finding your way back home to the Creator. That's what the Quran primarily discusses with. And I've heard many times people quote this, that if you were to look into the amount of like text, say like legal text, if you like, that is contained in the Quran, it's like 1.something%. There's more conversation about the afterlife, about the internal issues that a human being has to deal with, like jealousy, lying, and all these things. The Quran talks way more about that than the Sharia aspect.
The Sunnah as well, which you integrate.
Also, the Bible is a sequence of what's the word that you use? Like parables. Yeah. The Bible is told in like real time, like through people's events and experiences. Whereas the Quran largely is a wider narrative. It's like God's word.
It's open to interpretation, as you know.
And also, you know what you were saying about the Sharia being like, I think it's interesting. You said that Christianity is not as political as Islam, because I think. And maybe within the way you're describing it, you're right. But don't you think like it would have been better? Like you said, Islam has a caliphate, it has a way of operating. Don't you think it would have been better if Christianity did, rather than splitting and fracturing into different empires, which were improvising their own way of instituting Christianity on a wider scale, and in turn made loads of mistakes and committed
that is happening
atrocities.
within your own religion.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of there are positives and there are negatives. And I would say, like, for example, and that's why if you, like, for Christians, when you look at Jesus and the time you had the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, so who claimed to sit on the seat of Moses. So Moses...
very political.
Yeah, exactly.
Very political.
That's what I'm saying. So that's where the criticism came, because they then sort of deviated because due to the human interpretation. I think you do need an element of leadership. I won't disregard that point, but I think that was one of the main criticisms, where there was too much human intervention, where they then distorted the law to their own.
No, but what is Jesus' mission? Jesus comes back to revive the letter of the Spirit.
The spirit of the law.
Because they were involved in the letter of the law so much, right? And that's pretty much what we're talking about here today, right? But like,
that's what I'm saying. I feel like you're arguing for with the sort of, when you say dealing with modernity, is that you're then kind of trying to appeal to the spirit of the Quran, where there'll be people who appeal to the sort of the letter of Sharia, and that's why she'll be like, her point would be, well, people's different interpretations.
Whose letter? What letter? Because whose letter? What letter? Because even within the Sharia, like he said, there's no book of Sharia. The Sharia is an extracted judgment based on the Quran.
But for example,
today,
like for example, you have the Reliance of the Traveller, which is the book Shafi. So for a different madhab, you may have something different.
I'm saying, like, over here just now, you had Murids. They're like a huge group of Muslims from Senegal, West Africa, like ultra predominant, much bigger in population in the wider Muslim global community than the high concentration of Salafi Muslims you have in Speaker's Corner right now, because of like the time and place which we exist in, This Speaker's Corner Muslim demographic is not representative or reflective of the wider Muslim demographic across the world.
That's what we would agree on earlier.
Or in history. And so the Sharia is a diasporic conversation with various opinions between, you say like it's a scholar's opinion on the Quran and the Sunnah.
What I'm saying, no, you didn't, because
you're right.
I'm saying, like I said to you earlier, this is where the problem lies in, because there's so much interpretation that can come in. This is, from my point of view, it's the scary side of that somebody can come into power and basically use their interpretation of the Quran to change everything.
Like, that's why you have a dialogue across scholars, across opinions, and all of them historically have been implemented. And in the Islamic Khulafa.
But you're right that it happened.
You're right.
I'm not going to deny it. It did happen.
And this is what I mean. That's what needs to not be.
However, I don't think it was because of interpretation. It was just because someone came in power and they had enough power to
It is
exert,
power, and then what? Because the thing is you can interpret, and your perception of everything is how you want to see it, and it will tell you what you want to know.
Because interpretation, if you think about interpretation is at the heart of humanity. Like, we exist and we can function because we're able to interpret. And it would be, to me, it would be very scary if we all had the same view, because then it would be very hard to function.
It's my point of, like, the fact of.
Yeah, but I understand your point. I do agree with you. But going back to Paperboy, because you raised a couple of, I think, sound argument, but like, let's explore if they're valid. So what was the last thing that you were saying? You were saying something about political and not political. Okay, this is what I wanted to say. I personally would never say that Jesus was political. What I would say is that Jesus was addressing leadership. The same way the Prophet would address leadership, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the same way Buddha in a way was addressing leadership, being part of the elite, leaving the palace, Buddha, and says, hold on, they're suffering. We're up there living our life, and then this is happening. So these great men, what they tend to do is they address leadership, they address where the power lies. But it's not because they're political. In fact, it's something very spiritual that they're dealing with. So that's why I would say that we are victims of our time. Like Raza said so well, we are victims of our time. To you, Islam may appear very political because the last 50 years, there has been conflicts in the Middle East where Islam comes from. So it may appear to you then that they're very more political, whereas the Western hegemony, and I'm not trying to say colonial are better or anything, or they're oppressors, I'm just saying how history has played out. The West had power over a vast array of the globe. Therefore, they don't have a knee-jerk reaction or chip on the shoulder. So that's why people are a bit more relaxed. And that's what I was trying to explain earlier on about the mind frame of certain Muslims, why they come to certain conclusions. Because it's not too much to do with the religion, it's actually to do with the person, it's to do with immigration, it's to do with being disfranchised by a majority.
And who you're in contact with as well, and the views of the people that you're in contact with and that you grow up with. That's universal across the board, isn't it? Unfortunately, when you look at sort of everything in life.
Yeah.
I mean, take religion out of it, that's a sociological factor that's happening anyway.
Thank you, sociological factor. Yeah. So we should view these things more with a sociological lens than a political lens or even a theological lens. Because this is the problem that happens sometimes when I talk to Christians, is that rightly, what connects us is theology in a sense, and we discuss it. But what happens sometimes, like you said so well, sister, is that we move the goalpost and make it about a theological thing when really it's a societal issue or a cultural issue, you know, or anthropological issue.
It's looking at all the factors and from a whole view.
It has to be a way more nuanced conversation. I really appreciate it,
and
by
less
the way.
linear and less kind of, you know, things like that. But I mean, that's the way I see it. I try to see everything. You know? I want to see the positive and the good in everything. And that's why it's enjoyable talking to people of different faiths. Because there's positives in everything of it. At the end of the day, we have that. You know, nobody can take that away from us, which gives us basically the upper hand anyway. Because what we got to lose, nothing. You know. So I mean, we should all be able to stand and have a conversation about our faith and celebrate our own faith rather than trying to diminish it from others. Rather than trying to say your view is wrong. Rather than saying that, you know, say, I see and understand where you're coming from and I can see your view. This is how I think. I can't see me changing it based on what you tell me, but I can see that there's elements of this that I think is good.
Yeah, and that's I believe that's the Quranic. That's very Quranic what you said there.
That is a very Buddhist way. It's a very Hindu way. It's a very it's a peaceful way.
So, Paper, any closing statements that you want to make?
No.
But I hope we can have more of these conversations.
We'll have some more. Because Ali had that initial question and it kind of evolved from that. So
I prefer these conversations more than theology. Because with theology, sometimes it's like it is what I believe and it's what you believe, and then there's not much changing in it, you know. So I prefer these type of conversation because I believe it gives us it's like the underbed of, you know, the worldview that why certain people believe certain things, you know. But yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Sorry, we did.
It's cool, thank you.
Which is you would have a really interesting topic that just kind of got by you.
The best.
Thank you.
So
I'll take them all, don't worry.
Alright, cool.
Let me stop these guys.
Bro, give me another 2 weeks to